I have two younger brothers, actually three, but two of them are really young, 8 and 10 years old. One of them is pretty competitive. I don't know why, maybe it has to do with his being a premature baby, I don't know. But the day before yesterday I put my hand on his head and he immediately asked, "Am I tall or short?" And he does this all the time. Imagine putting a Tetris game in his hands or a joystick. He is really competitive. Of course I answered that you are average, normal, which is to say perfect. And this put me on the groove I oftentimes find myself circling through, namely my obsession with the austere, the humdrum, the plain and the simple, how important it is, opposed to some striving for perfection. The first thing I think of when I am thinking about this is how being the best and the desire for being the best, the striving for perfection, for some ideal like purity, can have bad effects. And then I think of how finding a balance or reaching a balance between the positive and negative aspects of my psychological and physical limitations is more important. How important it is to rejoice at the opportunities those limitations can offer when they are balanced. How important it is to willingly participate in the imperfect unfolding I am a part of. And the conclusion I reach, of course, is that maybe the idea of perfection or purity as such is a false ideal, as much as the belief in pure essence is false, like justice or beauty, irrespective of context or contingency. In my mind, the idea of perfection and purity is somehow correlated with disappearance or worse, something negative, the onset of terror, not that harsh, but something negative. And we all know about the experiment where people were presented with pictures of faces, and the more symmetrical the face was, the more attractive people found that face, which was an interesting result. But I think the most interesting result was that, or finding was that the perfectly symmetrical face was actually repulsive for people. It was somehow not to their liking, and when I hear of this I think of leaves, or trees, how there are no two identical leaves or trees or two fingerprints. Somehow the organic is always more appealing in its little imperfections, its little variations on a theme, as opposed to the artificial, which is so perfect. Yes, choose your destiny. Now, still, the desire for, or the drive for perfection is pursued on many levels in society. For example, of course, to undergo plastic surgery in order to have the best breasts and the smoothest skin is basically to blend in, to aspire to a trite image of a curvaceous, unblemished illusion of anonymity, or to be a maximalist in one's studies in order to write the best tests is sometimes nothing more than to align oneself with the current ideological code unquestioningly, or on a more mundane level, when my little brother plays with a computer game and he gets angry when he falls short of completing the task, he is basically accepts that game, that dumb game, as testifying to shortcomings in him, which is not okay. And to some degree this may be reflected in the process of socialization as well, to some degree, where every child is brought into an awareness of a set of shortcomings or mistakes they make, which in turn will give rise to their actual sense of self to some degree. I think there is a part that don't do that, don't be like that, that's a bad thing to do. These somehow constitute a sense of self. Incidentally, once I saw my little brother playing with a game in which the task was to jump with a car, but it was not about jumping the biggest and the farther, but about jumping just the right length, just an appropriate length, and I applauded it. I was happy with this game. So if they have to play with games because that's the reality nowadays, then please design games with a rationale for moderation. It's not a bad idea. But I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about this. So anyway, we are beings with serious limitations, and those limitations in a wider perspective can be seen as tragic or not really conducive to well-being. But on the close up, there are moments of happiness. There are human moments when we communicate or when we see something in the other person. There are these little moments, and those can contain comedy as opposed to the big tragic picture. Because I think there is beauty in the mistakes we make. There is beauty in the blemishes of which we are patched together. There is beauty in our wrong-headed habits. But I believe that true beauty is actualized in our discovery, acceptance, and moderation of these features. And this is the point, not to try to eliminate these things, these features, but to embrace them, to moderate them, to be aware of ourselves, who we are, what's that we are doing. Because to try to eliminate these features, these blemishes, these little imperfections of which we are patched together is sometimes it's just acknowledging the tragedy or to deny the beauty.